Welcome to Yaka Digital Network. Between 1962 and 1986, Uganda entered a period of severe political turbulence and profound crises in governance. Independence in 1962 brought immense hope, yet that optimism rapidly collapsed into over 2 decades of cyclic violence and forced regime changes. This timeline identifies the 3 sharp, violent milestones that defined the collapse: 1966, 1971, and 1980. This recurring violence stemmed from a political culture where military might consistently overruled the rule of law. Traditional history often focuses on the specific dates and the names of the generals involved, but memorizing those facts is insufficient for a true understanding of the era. The root cause was a structural failure historians call the crisis of nationhood. To understand the liberation struggles, we must analyze the systemic failures of the early state and the ideological shifts that allowed the nation to rebuild after 1986. The British administrative structure forced a collection of distinct kingdoms and ethnic groups into a single geographic state, ignoring organic pre-colonial boundaries. This artificial binding created a weak centralized state, defined by elite polarization and ethnic rivalries. After 1962, these tensions led to a clash of models. Regional kingdoms, particularly Uganda, pushed for a federalist system to maintain regional autonomy. This was met with opposition from those favoring a unitary model, demanding a strong, centralized government to govern all regions from the capital. Prime Minister Milton Obote became the primary champion of this centralized, unitary authority. Obote's alliance with the Kabaka of Uganda fractured over disputed territories. Paralyzing the government, Obote suspended the constitution and arrested ministers to consolidate control. This political escalation ended in the 1966 crisis, the Battle of Mengo, when the central government launched a military assault on the Kabaka's palace. The assault abolished the kingdom system and centralized power in the executive. It established a precedent where political disputes would be resolved through military force. Because Uganda lacked independent institutions or electoral bodies to mediate disputes, competing factions were forced to rely on the army to seize power. This reliance led directly to the 1971 military coup, where Idi Amin overthrew the government and suspended all constitutional governance. Between 1971 and 1979, the military became an instrument of state terror, leading to a loss of human rights and a total economic collapse. After Amin's fall, the country attempted to return to civilian rule under a fragile interim government. However, the 1980 general elections were widely viewed as fraudulent, acting as a final flashpoint. The failure of these elections convinced several political factions that peaceful, democratic change was no longer a viable option in the existing system. By 1980, the social contract had been broken. Security agencies suppressed dissent rather than protected the public, making full-scale civil war inevitable. In 1981, a new guerrilla struggle was launched in the Luwero Triangle as a direct response to the disputed 1980 elections. This was the Bush War, led by Yoweri Museveni and the National Resistance Army, or NRA. The NRA adopted a protracted people's war. Unlike top-down military coups, this strategy built bottom-up support. Fighters embedded within rural communities to gain trust, conducting ideological training, mchaka, to ensure civilians understood the struggle's purpose. The reality of a protracted guerrilla war was grueling. It demanded immense sacrifice and deeply involved the youth in defending their own communities. To maintain this popular support, the NRA enforced strict military discipline, mandating the punishment of any soldiers who mistreated the civilian population. This approach sought to de-radicalize the military, attempting to transform it from a feared occupation force into a fully supported and trusted people's army. The transition in 1986 represented a radical shift in how the state viewed its relationship with its citizens. The roadmap for national recovery was the NRM's 10-point program. These load-bearing blocks focus on restoring democracy, ensuring security of life and property, and building a self-sustaining economy. Economic philosophy shifted away from statism toward liberalization, focusing on value addition for long-term independence. To dismantle highly centralized power structures, the government introduced the local council system. This pyramid shows power moving from the executive to the village level. The LCI structure moved crucial decision-making directly to the community, ensuring citizens felt governance in their daily lives. Decentralization and political education were designed to ensure that liberation resulted in a tangible shift in how the nation was governed from the bottom up. This push to institutionalize stability culminated in the 1995 Constitution, a direct attempt to provide a homegrown legal framework to prevent the return of dictatorship. By prioritizing national unity over sectarianism, the post-1986 era sought to rebuild a shared national identity for the first time since independence. However, students must also analyze the contradictions of this period. For example, critics often point to an elite citizen gap, where socioeconomic gains in urban centers have not always reached the poorest rural communities. Political scientists also debate whether these institutions are strong enough to outlive the liberation generation of leaders who first established them. This leads to a fundamental question for reflection. Does the current state of peace and stability justify the long struggle and the high cost of the wars that brought us here? The history of 1962 to 1986 demonstrates that military solutions to political disputes generate a self-perpetuating cycle of instability. Lasting stability relies instead on dialogue and institutional consultation. You can watch more videos for all classes here and get all content at www.yaka.cc.